Hello, everyone. I'm very excited and pleased that I'm joined with a student of mine and, in fact, a friend, Shantanu. Shantanu has been interacting with me for over 2 years. We started with some private tutoring sessions. He was also part of the classroom course, and he's had a very interesting journey. So I'm very excited for Shantanu to share his journey with you. Shantanu, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
So to start off, Shantanu, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. So, hi, my name is Shantanu. I graduated in the year 2016. I did my BMS with a specialization in finance. And post that, my professional background is turnaround consulting, investment banking, and private equity. And I'll be joining ISB in this April in the 2024 batch.
So congratulations on that. And
Thank you.
Shantanu, I know you've been working really hard for the last few years. So when did the seed of an MBA come in? How did you decide to start preparing for an MBA?
Sure. So I think I first thought about an MBA in the year 2018 while I was actually working for Deloitte. So I thought I'll work for about 3 to 4 years. So I actually started working in 2016. So I thought I'll work for about 3 to 4 years and then I'll pursue my MBA. So in 2018, I actually thought that I'll start preparing with my GMAT so that even if it takes about 8 to 9 months, I'll still have a good 7 to 8 months to work on my applications. So yeah, in 2018, I first thought of doing my MBA.
So tell us about your GMAT journey. How did that start? What books and courses did you use? What was that initial phase like?
Sure. So I actually started my GMAT journey in 2018 and I had started prepping with Jamboree. So I'd prepped with them for about, I think 6 to 9 months. I started studying in, I think, first week of April, and I gave my exam in November 18. And I actually came with a dismal score, like sub 550 score. And I got completely demotivated post that because even after I put in actually sincere efforts, I got a sub 550 score. So then I just lost hope and I quit it. And also I thought that because I still have, a couple of years left for my MBA, I thought that, I'll just take a break for about a year or so and then, start again. And what I didn't actually realize was the mistakes that I was actually making during my first GMAT stint. And so when I started prep again in 2020, I again, started with Jamboree, and again, I got a dismal score again of about 550. So I don't think my skill set was actually building. And that's when I actually took a step back and I started thinking about what can I do differently. And I spoke to a couple of people and they actually recommended this course by GMAT. So for mainly verbal and for quant or private tutors. So that's when I shifted to GMAT for verbal and quant and a private tutor for quant. So luckily my quant score really shot up. It shot up from about Q38, Q39 to I think about Q48. So my quant was pretty sorted in my opinion, but however my verbal was being really sticky. From about I think V22, V23, I still could only improve it to V28, V29. And that's when I realized that I actually needed a private tutor to actually kind of handhold me to and actually tell me how to analyze every single question. And I came across and I did I think a demo session with Anish and Chiranjeev on GMAT intensive. And that's when I actually understood the method of studying for every single question, how much time is supposed to be spending on a question, how you're supposed to be analyzing every single option and building scenarios with those different options, only so that your mental muscles actually get stretched. And that's when you actually start improving and your logical skills actually start building. So eventually I ended up taking Anish sir for private tutoring, mainly for verbal. And I was also doing his GMAT intensive course side by side. So I would take about 2 to 3 sessions of GMAT intensive, and then we would have a couple of private sessions. So we did that for about 5 to 6 months. And that's when I actually realized where I was going wrong all this while. And he actually told me a very simple thing that each time you look at a question, you're supposed to analyze the living hell out of it. Go in complete in depth and analyze every single option. And first understand what the option is actually trying to say, and then build scenarios as to, if this doesn't happen, if this happens, how will your response change. So I think that really helped me to build my reasoning muscles, and eventually my score in verbal improved from about V22, V21, V22 to V38. So yeah, that's pretty much my GMAT journey. I mean, it was a long journey. From 2018 I started it, then I stopped it for a couple of years, and then when I started it again in, I think in May 2020, I eventually got my score in September 2022. Yeah, so it's been a pretty long journey.
May 2020 through September 2022. All right, so close to 2.5 years. So did you take any practice tests the first time you were preparing 2018 before the actual one?
Yeah, so I think I'd taken all those I'd taken all those GMAT, the official GMAT mocks. I'd taken them. Then also a couple of these Princeton, the regular ones that everyone takes from Princeton, Manhattan. So I'd taken about 8-9 tests, and somehow I kept believing that I'm making silly mistakes. I wouldn't make these same mistakes in the exam, and I think that was one major reason for my downfall in the GMAT. So yeah, I mean, even though the indicators were there that I wouldn't do well in the test, I don't think I kind of listened to those indicators. So yeah.
So eventually, when you took the test in September 2022, what score did you get?
Yeah, so eventually when I took it, I got a 680. I got a V38, and while I wasn't that happy with my quant score, I mean, I thought 680 was a decent score, so I didn't want to take the GMAT again. But I was very happy. I was very pleased with my verbal score. My verbal score jumped by about 17 points, so I was happy with that.
And overall, I think you told me that.
Yeah. Overall, my score jump was about like 150 to 170 points. So that way it was satisfying.
Yeah, I remember we spoke at that time, and one thing you mentioned was how you felt a sense of relief.
Yeah. It wasn't a sense of happiness. It was more a sense of relief that, okay, finally now that I've got a decent score, so I can apply with this score.
Right. Excellent. So a couple of things you mentioned. You talked about skills, reasoning skills, and reading, things like that. So one thing that I always say, and we talked about it also, is the need of patience to develop skills. Yeah. Right? Just like there's a need of patience to develop muscles, even for skills, we need patience. So what gave you that determination to be patient and to not kind of rush through it and to expect results in a short, quick span? What gave you that drive?
Sure. So I guess there are, just to start off this answer, I guess I'd like to say that I think there are two kinds of people. One kind that have a strong base to begin with. So, they're anyway at a 640, 650, 660. So actually improving for them is I believe improving by about 30, 40, 50 points for them is, much easier, as they anyway have that base set. So, for them, building those skills is much easier as opposed to a person that's actually starting with about a 520, 530, 540 base. And I think the sooner you admit to yourself that your base is actually much lower than somebody that has 650, 660, 670 base, that's when you actually realize that you actually need that patience to, you need to be more patient with yourself to get your target score. And when I realized that my base is really low, I didn't have a target time frame in mind. I just wanted to focus on actually improving myself, and the way I focused on improving myself was spending as much time as possible on one specific question. I mean, it's not about the number of questions you solve. It's about how much time you spend with the question and how clear you are with as to why a specific answer is correct or why a specific answer is wrong. And over a couple of months, when you start realizing this, automatically the drive in you picks up, because you're improving and you want to improve further. So that is one sense of gratification or satisfaction that you feel once you start preparing the right way. I mean, if you keep preparing the wrong way, which is just solving questions blindly, not having a structured approach, you'll hate the journey. But once you actually start seeing that improvement, and the way you start seeing the improvement is, I mean, from within, you'll feel good that, okay, that you know why a specific answer is right or wrong. So I think that's the drive that kept me going. And I could literally see myself improving from, a V23, to that V27, to a V34, and then eventually a V38. So I think that's what kept me going to, constantly improve myself.
Brilliantly put, Shantanu. So let's stay on this for a second
Yeah.
longer. So improvement. How did you gauge that you were improving? Obviously, one is accuracy in terms of the percentage of questions you're getting correct. But was there anything else also?
Sure. I mean, the way I believe I felt I was improving is that when you solve a question, you just know whether it's right or wrong. Like you get this inner feeling, you get this inner happiness when you know why every single option is right or wrong. And when you get that feeling from within, you just know that you've improved. Like, for example, when I started RC prep, my RC score was dismal, my percentile was, I think, 20 percentile or something. And I eventually ended up with a 90-95% percentile in RC. So I could literally feel that I was improving when I could comprehend those complex sentences. So I could solve, I mean, I was solving the very hard passages, I mean, really, really easily and really quickly. So that's when you actually feel that, and that's when you know that you're improving. And I don't think you need, accuracy or scores to tell you that you're improving. Like you just know that you're improving.
Right. I think I term the same thing as confidence, right?
Yes, confidence. Yes. So even during my exam, I mean, I think I gave the GMAT 5 times, 5 or 6 times. The first time when I gave it, I just knew my RC was horrible. I don't think I could understand how the paragraphs are linked. I wasn't understanding what they were trying to say. And the last time when I gave it, I mean, everything just flew in my mind. It was so easy for me. Even before reading the options, I knew what the actual answer was. So it was actually just finding that specific option in the answer choices, and it was a real breeze for me. And people say that RC, it's impossible to improve in RC. You either have it or you don't have it. I think that's completely nonsense. That's complete nonsense. I've seen that improvement from 20th percentile to 95 percentile. So I think RC is easiest to improve, because the way to improve in RC is just normally when you're reading your newspaper or article or Wall Street Journal, you're just supposed to connect the dots between paragraphs or sentences. And when you actually start doing that, the GMAT passages actually become a cakewalk for you.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned this earlier also. There were times in between when you were not actively preparing for GMAT, yet you kept doing things to still work on your skills. Am I right?
Yes. So what I realized over my long journey is that actually GMAT is not a test of how much you know or something like that. It's a test of skills. And those skills are actually not that hard to build once you know the path to build that skill set. So even though while I was not actively, practicing questions per se, I was focusing on building my skills. So the way I was doing that was I was reading these complex articles on Wall Street Journal or these complex biology articles and trying to just understand what they're trying to say and just summarizing each paragraph in my mind. So that was what I was doing to, while I was not actively prepping, that's what I was doing to improve my overall skill set.
Got it. Let's talk about the process that you followed throughout. Did the way you study change? How you started studying initially? I know you already mentioned a couple of things about how, for example, instead of number of questions, you were now focusing on getting the most out of each question. Was there anything else also in terms of the process that you followed to study?
So, I mean, a couple of things was that when I started off, I think I was just, I don't think I was kind of reviewing where I was going wrong. I was just, putting in those number of hours. I was just, I think I was just studying blindly like a headless chicken. And I wasn't making most of the GMAT official questions. And as and when I started realizing where I was going wrong, I realized that firstly, you should only stick to official questions. You should not attempt any questions from any outside source, because many a time the reasoning in those answer choices or in those questions are a little flawed. So that, I mean, while it doesn't harm you a lot, it's not as productive as an official GMAT questions. So that was one. I think you should only practice some official questions. Number two was know where exactly you're going wrong. The sooner you realize this, the easier it becomes for you to actually correct that. So for me, I don't think I was actually going wrong in terms of formulae or in terms of knowledge of specific chapters. Where I think I was going wrong was my basic skill set, which was reasoning or just your reading skills. So when I actually realized this, I started working towards that. So secondly, I would say is that know where you're going wrong. So just take a step back and try and figure out why aren't you, why didn't you get a specific question, and think about what could you do to actually change this. So I don't think I actually did that in-depth analysis of where I was going wrong and what I could do to change it. And thirdly, just don't focus on the number of questions. Just focus on quality as to what you can do to actually improve this solution. What you can do to improve the clarity of why a specific option is wrong or right. And don't rush through questions. I mean, if you rush through questions, that reasoning won't build only. Like it's of no use. You would have just wasted 15-20 minutes on that one question and you wouldn't have learned anything from that question. So try and learn from every single question and please create an error log. I don't think I created an error log in the beginning. I think an error log is really, really necessary, and keep revising that error log as to what are the concepts you learned from that specific question. So I think, yeah, these 4 or 5 things I kind of inculcated in my process throughout my entire journey.
Got it. I think I recall I recall one story you'd shared with me. I think it was after our third or fourth session. I'd asked you, are you seeing any improvement in things outside of GMAT also? And I'll share that story with you guys, the viewers also. Shantanu talked about squats. So I was expecting that he'll talk about reading and understanding things outside of GMAT maybe, or his work. But he started talking about squats. Do you remember that, Shantanu?
Yeah.
So yeah, let me share that. So Shantanu said that he used to do, I think he said 3 sets of squats every day. But ever since we started working and how him and I together were focusing on the process and the way of doing things, he started focusing more on how he was doing each squat. As a result, he was now able to do fewer squats, but he did believe that he was getting more out of that smaller number because he was doing that properly. So that was a brilliant example that Shantanu shared, which highlights the importance of the process, right? It's not about how many squats, it's not about how many questions, but it's about how much we get out of each one that we're doing.
Yes.
All right. So a couple of questions related to retakers. Your journey overall technically was close to 5 years. And from 2020, you had been preparing kind of nonstop. So did you have a stage where you kind of ran out of official questions?
Okay. Yeah, I guess when I first prepared in 2018, I think I must have solved like most of, I think 60% of the official questions. And then when I started again in 2020, I think I must have solved the remaining 30-40% of those official questions. But even though I solved those official questions, once you start solving them again, but with a different perspective. So previously my perspective was to see, I mean, what my accuracy was, how many questions I'm getting right, and then I would judge my performance based on that. But I don't think I was kind of learning from those questions as much. So even if you, I think, rush through your entire question bank, if you actually solve each question with the intention of learning, I think you can even repeat questions, because the learning from each question is so much more when you're analyzing it in that depth that it feels like a new question only, because you kind of learn about insights that you would have previously not even thought about, that you didn't kind of remove the first time when you were solving those questions. So I don't think it's a big issue if you have to do one question multiple times, because each time you do it, if you do it properly, then the learnings from it will be much more. So I think with me, that wasn't an issue, because the last time when I was solving my questions, my focus was on learning from them, and I learned from every single question. So that way there are, it's like an entire ocean of questions. So I don't think it's an issue in terms of number of questions.
Got it. That's a very important thing that Shantanu brings up, because that's something that many retakers often wonder, that, oh, I have used up all the questions. Right? All that really means is that they've attempted the questions. Maybe they selected one of the answers. But that doesn't automatically mean that they've extracted whatever there was to learn from that question. So thanks for bringing that out, Shantanu. Let's talk about the emotional side of things now a little bit. So the first question here, Shantanu, is, I think you touched upon this earlier also. When you started preparing back in 2018, what was the mindset in terms of the duration? How long did you think GMAT would take you?
So honestly, I thought that, it'll get done in about 6 months, and worst case scenario about 8 months, because that's what everyone says. Your journey should last anywhere between 3 to 6 months. But I don't think anyone should, I don't think you should put a time frame on this, because as I mentioned earlier, that everyone's starting skill set is really different. So the mistake that I made was that, I put that time frame, and because of that I was just rushing through the questions, and I wasn't able to learn from those questions. So I believe that firstly, a time limit should not be put, and if you don't put a time limit, then you can just remove more from every single question. So I think that was one mistake that I made, and it's very, very normal for people to take a year, 18 months. The number of people that actually take 3 to 6 months is they're very few, and the percentage of people that take over 9 to 12 months, that's way, way, way higher than the number of people percentage of people that take 3 to 6 months.
So how did you initially have that notion that, oh, I should be done within 6 to 8 months? Usually people take 3 to 6 months.
So I'd spoken to, a few of my friends, and a few of my seniors. They all said that, it takes about 3 to 6 months. And I think on LinkedIn, on GMAT Club, people are posting that it takes 6 months. So, I mean, it was automatically ingrained in my brain that, it takes about 6 months to prep for it.
Right. If you think about it, all someone can mention is that it took me 6 months, right? No one can say that it takes 6 months, right? Also, anyone can share is how long it might have taken them. And even there, like you rightly pointed out, we don't know what they're starting at.
Yes, exactly.
It's not like everyone is starting at an even playing field. So then, when you got that 550, or even later on, was there any self-doubt or judgment at any point with yourself?
I mean, to be honest, yeah, there was a self-doubt, because while the others were taking about 4 to 6 months to get, the 680, 700, 720, over here I've been studying for 8, 9 months, and, the needle wasn't moving much. So of course, the self-doubt creeps in. You do doubt as to why your score isn't improving and everyone else's score is improving. But eventually, when you take a step back and you actually start evaluating as to what was going wrong, I think the answers automatically there and there become more clearer as to what's going wrong with you and what was missing in your prep to begin with.
So what was it? I know you've talked about it earlier also, but if you were to summarize, what were the things that were missing? Or let me frame the question in a different way. If you were to start your prep again, what would you do differently this time?
So if I were to start my prep again, I would just focus on building a solid base. I would, focus on just improving my reading skills, comprehending complex sentences pretty easily, structuring sentences in SC so that, automatically you identify those subject verb errors, trying to understand the meaning of every sentence very, very, very clearly. As when I started before, I was just going after the rules. I wasn't actually going after the meaning, and meaning is king in SC. So I think that's one big thing that I would do if I was starting my prep again. And for CR, I guess I would try and build different scenarios for the options and try to understand as to how simple changes in specific words will change the entire meaning of the question and how it actually affects the question stem. So to summarize, if I were to start my journey all over again, I would just focus on building my basics, which is your reasoning skills, your mental math skills, and of course the way you read complex sentences instead of just jumping into solving.
All right. So Shantanu, what message would you have for students who've just started preparing for the GMAT now?
Okay. So I think firstly, people shouldn't put a time frame on their GMAT journey, because I firmly believe that if you put a time frame for your GMAT journey, you won't be extracting the maximum that you can from a question, and as a result of that, your learnings won't be good enough, and you won't be able to apply those learnings in subsequent questions, which is extremely important in my opinion. Secondly, I don't think people should be putting a time limit for solving a question initially, because initially for the first few months, it's the motive is to learn. So if you put a time limit, if you put that 2-3 minute time limit in the beginning only, you won't be able to learn from those questions, and your skills won't improve. And if your skills won't improve, you just hit that plateau. Your score is not going to jump up. So that's number two. And number three was that at least for me, like what worked was that, given that I was a retaker, etc., is to choose a tutor that actually helps you build these skills. There are loads of tutors over there. Some will just help you with, some will just teach you the rules. They won't actually tell you, they won't help you build those skills. So what actually worked for me was that GMAT intensive and Anish, so they actually helped me build those skills. So these two worked fabulously for me. So I'd recommend them for everyone starting off their GMAT prep, or people retaking their exam.
I appreciate your saying that. Thanks very much for your time, Shantanu. Wish you the very best for your stint at ISB, and I'm sure you'll have a wonderful career ahead. And obviously, we'll stay in touch.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Yeah.